Ready? We're going to do this quick, folks. So, this is the automobile week, and before we get to the car dealer, I want to briefly talk about the big picture of the car business. Specifically, sustaining wealth versus depleting wealth. You're not going to create wealth by buying cars, so get that part just out of your whole mindset. But we do want to sustain our wealth, and we can do that through proper behaviors, or we can basically deplete our wealth through making other decisions. So one big point is detach your self-image from your car. Make that car separate from who you are. Just because somebody owns a brand new car does not make them more successful or better than somebody else. Once you detach yourself, your self-image from that possession, you free yourself. The other option is you are what you drive. You put your whole self-esteem based off the vehicle that you drive. Sustaining wealth, research, prepare, execute. All the preparation that goes into it will increase your chances of getting the best possible deal. The other option is winging it. Just show up and say, hey, the dealer's my friend. No, he's not. Next up, buy a 3 or 4-year-old car. If you really want to reduce your cost, find a way to reduce the depreciation on those vehicles. That 3 or 4-year-old vehicle can do just that. The other option is buy new cars. Buy as many new cars as possible. That's a very easy way to deplete your wealth over time. Maintain and keep your car a long time. Go through as few cars in your life as possible, rather than get bored and buy another one. Pay with cash. Focus on that. You can do it. You can pay with cash. Many people do it. Save your money, buy vehicles with cash. You'll save a great deal of money over your lifetime. The other option is, just worry about the monthly payment. Disregard everything else. Just give me the right payment and I'm good to go. Good way to go broke. Avoid extended warranties. The odds are stacked against you. That's why they're pushed on you. The extended warranty benefits the dealership, not you. You may know somebody who's benefited from the extended warranty, but that's a minority. The vast majority of people lose money. That's why the dealership pushes it on you. Rather than, sign me up. Sure, just tack it on to the loan. Never lease a vehicle. Leasing will rob you of your wealth. The other option is always lease, because I can get a nicer car with a lower down payment. Maybe no down payment, and a lower monthly payment. Last but not least, focus on cost. Focus on cost before you buy the vehicle. What is that vehicle going to cost you for the next year, the next 5 years? And really focus on what that vehicle is going to cost you when you go to register it in that first year. In the state of Iowa, you're going to be paying 5% in that first year of registration. The other option is worry about all that cost after. Screw it. Just worry about what you made, what's going to cost you later. I just want a vehicle now. So, without further ado, our local car dealer.
If I could just touch on one thing before we get into the PowerPoint. Points here, the cost of owning a car. I've had buyers coming in before. If you're a young 20-something, men especially, and you buy a 2-door car with a large V8 or V6 engine, it's considered a sports car. I've had people that wound up with their monthly insurance payment being more than their monthly car payment. So that is very, very important. Most of you probably heard the term caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. This is absolutely the case with buying a car. It's such a large ticket item. The The salespeople in the car business are highly trained. In fact, that is their job. They're the spokesman for the dealership. They assist you in the buying process, but their main focus is to generate as much profit for that car dealership as possible, because that also puts money in their pocket. Almost all your car salesmen are commissioned, so the more money they can get out of you for that car, the more money they're going to make. They try to convince you they're your friend. You have to watch out for yourself. That's your job. You have to take care of your best interest. You need to educate yourself, just like Mike was saying. That's your job. Go out, look on Kelley Blue Book, Edmunds.com. You need to research the type of vehicle that's going to fit you best, the type of vehicle that's going to be safe, the type of vehicle that's going to be fuel efficient. Whatever you're looking for, what qualities and traits you want, that's your job to find that out. And once you've done that, obviously go out and buy it. There's 7 different areas I want to kind of touch on tonight. First one's dealer methods, how they get you to do the things they want you to do. Then financing. Financing is probably the #1 area that can cost you money if you're not careful. Credit insurance, that's your credit, life, accident, and health, also known as slip and trip and croak and choke. Service contracts, another place where dealers make a lot of money. Gap coverage. Gap coverage is the insurance that covers you if you wreck your car and you owe more against it than what it's worth. Protection packages, that's your undercoating, paint protection, and Scotch guard. And then we'll take a quick look at lease versus buy. First thing, the most important dealer method that they do, they want to gain as much information about you as possible. And the #1 piece of information they're looking for is what will you tolerate for a monthly payment. And the #1 thing you don't want to do is tell them what you want your monthly payment to be. If you tell them what you want your monthly payment to be, that's what you're going to get for a payment. You may want a $400 a month payment, but you'll wind up with a $275 a month car and $125 a month of other stuff. So key is go in, know what car you want to buy, know how much that car should cost you, and know that it's going to fit your monthly budget. But don't tell them that. They also want to know your personal information. That way they can potentially put in a credit app for you and know even before you go out for a test drive whether you're going to qualify for credit. If they get your personal information, they can run a credit app. They can actually find out what your current monthly payment is. So you go in there and you're currently in a $300 a month payment. They might go, well, we can probably get them up to $350 a month. So until you settle on a car, keep that to yourself. Don't share that with them. Payment tolerance, that's like I said, that's the #1 thing that they're looking for. Another thing they do, and they're well trained in this, is objection handling. If you say, no, I don't want a service contract. Oh, you really need a service contract because what happens if you have a transmission go out and you just can't afford to do that? For a mere $35 a month, you don't have to worry about that $2,000 repair bill. So they're well trained. Anytime you have an objection, they're going to have an answer. So you better be prepared for that and stick to your guns on if you say no, you mean no. They also use that as leverage. If you tell them you want a $400 a month payment, they come in at $399 a month, and you say, well, no, I'm not sure that's really a good deal on this. Hey, we made your payment. What's the deal here? Let's do this deal. So that gives them leverage. Any information that they find out about you, what you want, they use that against you to get you into that car. So you have to be prepared for that and defend yourself, because it will come. They exploit your lack of knowledge. That's why you need to know what your trade-in's worth. You need to know what financing is available as far as interest rates. You need to know your credit score, so you know if you qualify as say a tier 1 for a 2.59 rate, or if you're a tier 4, you've got shaky credit, and you're going to get hit with a 5.5% rate. You need to know those things.
What credit score, like if they're looking at their credit score, what score should they be pulling? We talk about FICO for mortgage. If you use FICO in the offices?
Yes. I can't say the one we use. Experian is the common one, but typically a score of 720 or better is about as good as you need to get the best rate. Right now, with 720, you can get a 2.49 rate with a local credit union. They also, that's a tier 1. The credit union I do most of mine with has a tier 1 plus now. If you're 760 or better, that would get you 2.29%. As long as I'm thinking about that. Another thing that you can do with your financing. Yep. Question?
No, go ahead and finish.
Some credit unions now are doing a loyalty bonus. If you're financing your car with them, you have a checking account with them, you have your paycheck direct deposited to them, and then you allow them to do an auto pay on the loan payment, they give you another 0.25% off. So that's another thing to keep in mind with the financing.
I've seen interest rates posted at a couple of different credit unions. The newer vehicles get the lower rate. Okay. But like, if you get a 3 or 4 year old vehicle, it's going to be quite a bit more than that.
Not necessarily quite a bit. Like I say, right now the best rate with a 760 or better on the credit union I use, they're at 2.29. And that'd be Meridian Credit that sponsors this. They have very good rates, 2.29, and the loyalty bonus actually takes you down to 2.04.
Is that new or used?
That would be new and late model used. That would be a 11, 12, or a new vehicle. And then it starts to ratchet up from there. But you're talking the difference between 2.29 and, say, 3.99, depending on your credit score and how old. If you get into a 7 or 8 year old car, it might be up around 6%, 6.5%, depending on your credit score. Yes.
And when we talk about the new and used, Mark, Mr. Dealer, could you please remind them too of the depreciation, right? So you may pay a slightly higher interest rate for a used car, but when you drive that used car off the lot, you're going to see a much different depreciation from driving a new car off the lot.
Right. And then there's a number of reasons a used car can be a better deal, depending on what you're looking for. Not only the depreciation, it comes down the most the first year, and it's less and less every year as it goes by. But the interest rate is a little bit higher. Your license fees can be less on a used car, because after a certain number of years, then it comes down. But flip side of that, your repairs start to go up. But it's usually cheaper to repair a car than to buy a new one. So, anyway, the main thing with the dealer methods is they are going to exploit your lack of knowledge. So educate yourself well before you go into the dealership. Then at the end, once they feel like they've showed you the car, they've gone through everything, they're going to push really hard to get you to sign the deal before you leave. The common term in the business is if you try to leave without signing on the dotted line, you say, well, I'll be back. Well, be-backs don't come back, because the next dealer down the line, he doesn't let you get out the door without signing a purchase agreement. Just a little side story on that too. You have to be really, really careful what you sign when you're at the dealership. Heard a story about a guy went in, wanted to test drive a car, and they took him in and said, yeah, great, we'll put you in this. We just need to have you sign a couple of documents here before you go. what he didn't realize was he was signing a purchase agreement before they let him take a test drive. He came back, they said, oh, what'd you think? He said, nah, that one's not for me. He said, well, it's your car, you bought it. I said, what are you talking about? He had signed a purchase agreement. So, yeah, there's some interesting things that go on. You have to protect yourself at all times. So with regards to financing, like I said, this is probably the most critical part of the deal. You can stand to lose more money with financing generally than you can actually on the purchase of the vehicle. Dealers nowadays know that everybody knows what the invoice is on a new car. They know what their trade-ins are worth. So the sales prices are pretty consistent. The discounts are consistent. The trade-in values are consistent. As long as you know what that information is and you use that in your purchase, you should be okay. Financing's a different story. First thing you need to do is go to your credit union and get yourself pre-approved so you know what you qualify for as far as a rate. Get your credit score and know that when you go into the dealership. There's nothing wrong with letting the dealership finance it if they're competitive because it saves you some effort. You don't have to go 2 places to do the deal. Make sure you know what they're charging you.
Question?
Yes.
And again, they should always go to the credit union or their lender prior to getting that estimate from the dealer, right? Know that number before the dealer, because the dealer may tell you what, they may tell you what a lender may give you.
Right.
Right? Which may or may not be true.
Yeah. And it's really quite simple because a lot of them are going to have them published on the web. But again, most of them are going to use a tiered system, whereas Viridian Credit Union, they have Tier 1 plus 1 on down to Tier 5. And so you need to know where you're going to fall into there. And then the other thing is, the rate also is dependent upon how much you borrow. If you borrow the full boat up to window sticker, you're going to pay a little higher rate, whereas on a new car, if you borrow up to trade-in value, or up to dealer invoice, the rate's better, usually by somewhere around 0.5%. On a used car, if you borrow below trade-in value, your rate's better. So having some equity in your trade-in or some cash down is going to help you out there. But again, that's something you need to know. It's easiest probably just to call in if you got a credit union or bank that you work with. That's your best bet. And typically, a credit union, you're going to be a little bit better off. They have a little bit of a tax advantage over a bank. And on car loans, the credit unions are the best bet as far as financing. But know that information before you go into the dealership, and you'll see why in a bit. Your loan officer typically is not a commissioned salesperson, I don't believe, are they? Well, but yeah. You can kind of trust them at the
Well, they're subject to a whole lot more rules, you know, they're subject to licensing of loan officers.
Right.
And they don't work for a bank or credit union, so they're pretty much more heavily regulated than a car dealership.
Right. When we get into the example, I'll show you what the dealers actually do to generate more gross profit. But like I say, let the dealer quote it, and if they're competitive, go for it. Because it saves you time and effort. You don't have to go 2 places to sign documents. Another very important thing is know the term, know how many months the dealer's setting up that loan for. If you say you want a $400 a month payment, there's a big difference between a $400 a month payment for 48 months or for 84 months. You can actually do an 84-month loan on a car now. Yeah, it's crazy.
And how many years is that?
7.
7.
7 years that you get to pay on that car. And the average person keeps the car about 3 years. And that is why people wind up upside down in their car and owe more than what it's worth. This is critical. Know what constitutes the principal. I know a guy that went to a dealership out in Omaha, wanted to buy a pickup, and made the deal, sat down to do the paperwork. They started handing out the paperwork, and they got to it, and they said, okay, here's your extended warranty. I don't want a warranty. And they said, oh, you got to have a warranty. Nope, don't want it. So we made them go back and redo the paperwork. They started to do it again. And he says, okay, here's your credit life and accident health insurance. I don't want credit life and accident health. And, oh yeah, you got to have that in case you die or get hurt. Nope, don't want it. So we made them redo it a second time. And came back a third time. And that time, I think they had gap coverage in it. And he made them redo it 3 times because they just slide the stuff in without asking. And I mean, when they go to sign the paperwork, they ask you to sign it, tell you what it is, but they just assume that you're going to want it. And that stuff all costs money, and you're the one paying. As far as credit insurance goes, credit, life, accident, health, first off, do you have a need to cover that? If you die, is somebody going to be in a pinch because you didn't have credit insurance on your car? If you're just out of college, single, no commitments, let them have the car back, right? Accident health, a lot of people will have this, you're all college students. Hopefully, when you get out and get a good job, you'll have some good life insurance and coverage for accident health through your employer. If you don't, it's cheaper to go to your favorite insurance agent and buy a term life policy or your accident health policy. It's going to be cheaper than putting it on the loan typically, but check that out. Quote that with your local agent. I've actually seen where it was cheaper to buy a $50,000 term life policy than it was to put credit life insurance on it. And with the term policy, you actually get paid $50,000 instead of just the remaining balance on the loan. So you really have to look at that. Do you have other policies? Have you already got life insurance? Maybe you're married, you have 2 kids, and when you have your kids, you thought, well, we better have a $500,000 life policy. If you've already got adequate coverage, there's no point in adding more. Your life circumstances, again, if you're not in a position where it's going to be a problem, if you don't have the coverage, don't spend the money. Don't get talked into it because it is expensive. Typically, you're talking somewhere around $1,800 to $2,000 worth of coverage. Yeah. So even on a 60-month note, that's $30, $35 a month. Doesn't sound like much when you talk about per month, but it's still a lot of money and you're paying it. Again, if you're single, married, if you've got kids, what you have for financial reserves. Do you have the ability to get other credit? If you've got, I hate to say it, but even if you've got a $10,000 credit card balance or a limit that you can use, it's cheaper than buying that insurance if you have that available. Not saying use it, but if you have to, it's still better than paying for that insurance and maybe not using it. Again, price with a reputable agent, better coverage, lower cost. And service contracts. You will get hit repeatedly. You'll get hit at the dealership. You're going to get hit by repeated mailers after you buy a car. Just like at Best Buy, they want to sell you a service contract on everything there is. They try their darndest because there's a lot of money to be made in service contracts. All it is insurance that shares the expenses amongst other people. There's a commission to the salesperson, there's a commission to the dealer, administrative expenses, profit to the insurer. When you get right down to it, you look here, typically on a service contract, if you've got a $2,000 service contract, the dealer cost is probably somewhere around $1,000, $1,100, maybe $1,200 at the most. You've got an insurer, the company that's writing the policy, they're going to want to make some money. They're going to have some administrative expenses So out of your dollar, there's not a whole lot that's going to pay the expenses. So unless you're a really unlucky person, or you're in.
Does the dealer have the percentages available to them? Do they know what percent of people will most likely use an extended warranty?
No, that's not anything the dealer themselves know. All they really know is the suggested retail price of it and the dealer cost. Typically, the dealer won't know what those percentages are.
But they know they're in their favor.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Do dealers work with multiple service contract providers? Or
They can.
They typically just have one that they work with?
Generally, there's a manufacturer product. If you have a new car dealer, whatever their new car franchise is, they're typically going to offer a product in the extended contract, which I would recommend going with as opposed to an aftermarket. There's a lot of aftermarket products out there, and we've had some experience where they're here today, gone tomorrow, and you never know if you're actually going to have coverage, because the service contract company collects a bunch of fees, boom, they disappear to the Bahamas or wherever, and you're stuck holding it. There's some very reputable independents out there, but I'd try to stick with a manufacturer if you could.
So are these numbers more relative to the aftermarket service plans or like the manufacturer's extended warranty?
They're fairly consistent. Generally, you're going to see somewhere around a 40 to 50% gross margin for the dealer on that. And the other point to be made with that is, if you really want a service contract, let's say you're just out of college, you're just married, you got a child and another one on the way, and you don't want to take that chance, you're more comfortable with financing the service contract into your payment. Might not be that bad of an idea, but remember that you can negotiate the price of that service contract. Just because they say it's $2,000 doesn't cast that in stone. Everything's negotiable. The service contract's negotiable, the interest rate's negotiable typically, all that stuff is negotiable. The one time the interest rate is not negotiable with a credit union. If the credit union sets the rate, that's it. But typically, the banks that the dealers use, they set up the finance in two different ways, and the dealer gets paid in two different ways. Credit unions typically set the rate. The dealer gets paid a flat fee based on how much it's borrowed. It'll range anywhere from $100 to $450. But the other banks will set it up, and they'll look at the credit app and say, okay, we'll loan this person money for 2.5%. Dealer comes back and says, great news, we got you into your payment at $400. What they're not telling you is that they're charging you 5.5% interest. They're making a 3% margin on that. Some places you can only do 2.5%, some places it's 3%. But they can make a lot of money on the financing, as you'll see here in a little bit. It's just called on the margin, and there's actually a court case on it out on the East Coast right now. They may be cracking down on that. So some dealer was using it in a discriminatory manner. So
Shocking.
Gap coverage. Most people have never heard of this. What it is, when you buy your new car and finance it, if you pay too much for it, or you buy a brand new car and it depreciates a bunch when you drive it off the lot, and 6 months from now you go out, you have a wreck, you total the car, and you owe $25,000 on it, but the insurance company says, well, it's only worth $20,000. You have a $5,000 gap. Well, that's what this gap coverage takes care of. Typically, you're going to see a premium on it somewhere around $600, $650. I was told by a guy that was in the gap business, he was actually in the business of providing it. He said that for every $1 of premium paid, 1 penny got paid out in commissions. So if you went to the casino and were playing a machine, a slot machine, would you put $1 in there if you thought you only had a chance of getting a penny out? My contention is if you feel like you need gap coverage, you're buying the wrong car. Find something you don't have to worry about being upside down in and buy that. Don't buy a whole bunch of accessories, a whole bunch of extra service contracts, get jacked around on the interest rate. That's what's going to cause you to get upside down in your note. So that's where you watch out. You should not need gap coverage. Again, financial reserves. If you've got enough to make up the difference, if you did have a difference, why spend that $600? Doesn't make sense. Actually, with gap coverage, what I've seen of the $600 premium, about $200 is the dealer cost. So that in itself gives you a pretty good idea that there's not much premium gets paid back to the customer. The other thing is too, how often does somebody total out a vehicle, they're upside down in it, they live to tell about it, to actually collect on the policy? Protection packages. I've actually had a little bit of a change of heart on this since I did up this presentation. The protection package is your undercoating, your paint protection, and your interior cloth, your seats and carpet protection, Scotch Guard. Typically, I've seen the sale price on this being somewhere around $795. Dealer costs somewhere around $150. Again, like I said, if you really think you want it, negotiate the price. And there are dealers that pack this on immediately when they put the car on the lot. They don't give you a choice. If you don't want it, I'd go to another dealership, find somebody that doesn't do that automatically. But if you do want it, and the one reason I would say now I'm kind of having a change of heart on this, the state is putting all this brine on the roads. You know, they spray the road every time before they hear snow's coming. It's being really hard on the body panels. So undercoating might not be a bad deal. You can get just undercoating typically for right around $300 if you don't want the Scotch Guard. Typically they're Scotch Guarded from the factory anyway. Paint jobs with the clear coat or the pearl coats that they use now, paint jobs are in pretty good shape. But I would recommend possibly looking at undercoating, but just the undercoating. Like I say, clear coat's durable, cloth and carpet's already treated, and like I say, I've changed my mind on this one. And again, a large part of that is dealer profit. Like I said, sometimes the dealer will say, yep, sorry, all of our cars in the lot are already pre-done. Well, then I'd go to another dealership. So, just for a little example, if you had a brand new Ram Quad cab at $41,000, let's say we discount that down to $500 over invoice. Consumer rebate right now, $42.50. That means you'd be paying $34,292 for that truck. Finance it 2.74% over 60 months, puts you at a $612 payment. Now the key here is, let's say you went into that deal and said, hey, I want to stay under $600 a month. They'll come back and say, sorry, you can't afford that brand new 2013. But what you can afford maybe, they'll say what you can afford though is this nice late model used 2012 Ram with 20,000 miles on it. Stand there looking at it on the lot, you can't tell the difference. It's got a retail book at $30,006. Let's say they discounted $1,500, sell to you for $29,125, 7-year, 100,000 mile warranty. The max coverage, $3,500. I mean, a $3,500 service contract. But watch how it plays into the numbers. Go ahead.
What's the difference between the now retail book
who's putting the numbers together. They kind of bounce back and forth. Sometimes NADA is a little higher, sometimes Kelly's a little higher. I would probably lean towards Kelly right now, and it's very easy to get to on the internet and pull those numbers up. So that happens to be the NADA on that one. There's your credit, life, accident, health. That's that policy cost, your protection package, your gap coverage. So now we're sitting at a total selling price, 33 grand. Finance it at 6% over 72 months, but guess what? They got your payment under 600 bucks. Okay, so what's your objection? We made your payment. Let's sign the deal. Let's do it. That's where the objection handling comes in. That's where tweaking the deal comes in. That's what you have to be careful of. Let's back up here once. If you were $500 over invoice, is what they call holdback. It gets paid back to the dealer later. It's extra profit. On this particular vehicle, it would be about 1,200 bucks, and your finance and insurance flat fee of 450 bucks. So the dealer makes about 2,100 bucks. Doesn't sound too bad, right?
It's pretty hard to get information on the holdback, right? For the average person.
I'm not so sure, but what Edmonds or Kelly doesn't have that information.
That's important to know. If we can find that out or not.
Most dealers don't mess with the holdback. That's just what they need to operate on, and I would recommend trying to get them to dip into that. Most dealers on just a straight out cash deal are going to be pretty close to invoice.
Because sometimes that's how they can say, we're actually below invoice.
Right.
And they can say that because of the holdback that they're getting. Right. We're not an expert.
Correct. And you'll notice they'll say $50 below invoice. They won't say $50 below cost. Because that's where the difference is. But again, dealers have expenses. We got to make money. So holdback's kind of the sacred cow that we really can't go into. But anyway, $2,100, yeah, that's probably a little on the skinny side for a lot of dealerships, but that's reasonable. So let's go back to this program vehicle. Based on what Manheim says that 2012 Ram is selling for right now, at a selling price of $29,125, dealer make $2,625 bucks on the truck. Okay, that's not bad on a used truck. Margin on the extended warranty, $1,200. They made off that $3,500 contract. Credit insurance, another $1,000 bucks. Gap coverage about $400. Protection package. Commission on the finance contract. On the amount of that loan, roughly $30,000, the difference with 3% added to it generates $3 grand for that dealer. More than any other single item up there, more than the gross profit on the vehicle. And that's all coming right out of your pocket. That's why you have to know the finance terms. You have to get your own financing lined up ahead of time and know what you qualify for. Otherwise, you're going to wind up paying that extra $3,000 bucks. Total profit for that dealer, $8,900 on that one unit.
Versus 2,000 on the new one.
And I think that dealer's motivated to put you in that 1-year-old Ram or the brand new truck. What's that? Yep. And that's how they use your monthly payment as leverage against you. That's why you have to be careful. Don't give that to them. If I said there was a cardinal sin, it's to tell the dealer what you want your monthly payment to be. You have to know what you want to buy and how to buy it.
So on that particular example where the payment was $612 and it was over the $600 payment, I mean, another way that a consumer could have tried to qualify for that would be to have a longer term on the loan. Because the first example was 60 months
Right.
versus the second one was
But that's-
72 months.
But that's what they're gonna show you, and then they're gonna slide you into the 72 months on the other one, so, no, here's your payments, $597, away you go. Nothing illegal about that, nothing, it's not the way I want to do business, but it gets done all the time. It's just, you have to protect yourself. So the comparison there, the 2012, $597, you made your payment where you wanted it. Profit, 2,000 versus 8,000, big difference. Total cost to you, because a lot of that stuff, not just the profit, like you're paying $43,000 for that truck over the life of the loan, you're only paying $36,700 on the brand new truck. And that's huge. You're talking $7,000 difference in the cost to the buyer. Warranty was fairly similar with the way the extended service contract is set up. Interest rate 2.74 on a new versus 6 on a used. And when I say 6 on the used, that's with a finance company that pays the dealer on the margin as opposed to a flat fee. Term of the contracts, you got paid off in 5 years instead of 6. So, and brand new as opposed to 20,000 miles. Your best option might be that same Ram pickup. If you negotiate a little bit better, get a little bit better deal on that, because you're not just looking at the payment that you want to make, you're actually looking at what you ought to be able to buy it for. And Kelly's going to help you out on that. They give you good private party retail values. Go with the lifetime powertrain warranty that you can tack on there. Total selling price $28,800. And on a 2012, you can probably get that for the same $274 rate. Now you're talking about a $517 payment. So the difference here, the total cost to the buyer on that used 2012, bought correctly, $31,000 versus $43,000. You just save yourself $12,000 on the same exact vehicle. Yeah. It's huge. Yes?
So you do recommend buying a powertrain warranty?
Not really. I was just trying to compare apples to apples.
Okay. All right.
If you buy brand new, most of them are going to have, say, a 336 basic warranty, everything but normal wear items. Then they're going to have a powertrain warranty that goes on beyond that. For example, 5 years or 100,000 miles on the engine, the transmission, the driveline. On a pickup, it would include the transfer case for the four-wheel drive. It would include the differential front and rear. So
So I was just basically making the two vehicles equal in terms of the warranty on them.
yeah, I was just trying to kind of keep the example fairly similar so that when you see those numbers, they're relatively comparable. Monthly payment, extra, what, $85 less, 60 less months. It's a little thin, $1,765 doesn't, it seems like quite a bit. It takes a fair amount to keep the doors open nowadays with cost of health insurance, cost of utilities, cost of help and everything, but if you're a good negotiator, you can probably get there. A little bit about the warranties, they were very similar on the warranties. Some places that you need to look to understand what you're buying. The best document to look at when you're evaluating your deal before you sign it is your actual finance contract. You got what we call federal truth in lending disclosures on that document. It has to tell you the annual percentage rate. It has to tell you the total finance charge you're going to pay over the life of the loan. And it has to tell you what the amount being borrowed is. So when you look at that, then you go to the next section, and it breaks down everything you're buying. If you don't want credit, life, and accident health, make sure there's nothing there. If you don't want a service contract, make sure it's not there. There's your gap coverage. All you got to do is go to that finance contract to see what it is you're actually buying. It's all detailed there. It's also going to show on there how many months you're buying it for. So everything you need to know is going to be on there. I've also heard of dealers that will say, oh, well, we don't have that information. I can't get that for you. Don't buy that. If they tell you they don't have that information, get up and leave, because they want to keep you in the dark, and that if you're in the dark, you are going to get taken advantage of. We just have a few minutes left. A little bit on lease versus buy. What a lease actually does, well, the reason they're desirable is typically they're going to give you a little bit lower payment. You don't have to worry about being upside down. A lot of people like them because, oh, I get a new car every 3 years. And also, usually a lower payment. So the drawbacks, you're buying a payment. Even the most sophisticated buyer can't possibly figure out if they're paying the right amount for a lease. It's such a complicated formula to figure out a lease payment. You just can't know. Unless you specifically nail the dealer down and say, what am I paying for the vehicle? What amount, what purchase price is going into this calculation? There's so many fees and restrictions with a lease that aren't there with a straight purchase. There's an acquisition fee, typically about $875. There's a termination fee at the end of the lease, probably $375. Now I've seen where the residual, used to be you could buy out the vehicle at the end of the lease for the residual. Now they're tagging on $2,500 to the residual in some cases. So you're actually paying that twice. Frequently, because the payments are lower by the nature of the lease, how they're set up, they'll get a higher interest rate out of you. It just winds up being very expensive. It also creates limitations on how many miles you can drive. It says that at the end of 3 years, or however many miles you set it up for, you're going to have to get a new vehicle. Maybe you're not really wanting to do anything like that. Another trap that a lot of people fall into with leases, they'll go in with a trade-in that's worth $4,000 or $5,000. They'll come out with a lease payment of $225. Their lease gets over, and when they roll into the next one, now they've got no equity in anything, so now their lease payment jumps a whole bunch, and they're like, oh crud, now what do I do? I'm used to a $225 payment, now my payment's going to be $400 to get the same car. So that's kind of a trap you have to watch out for too. Yeah, I won't go through that right now, but with a lease, you've got the total cost of the vehicle, and you've got your acquisition fee tacked on top. Then you've got this residual, blue part here. And what you wind up doing with a lease is you have to, in your monthly payments, you have to pay the green and the red so that you get down to the residual, plus you're paying interest on everything that's outstanding for that length of time. With a purchase, you're just paying the whole thing and you're done. That acquisition fee is one thing to keep your eye on. I've just got some basic rules that you want to try to remember when you're buying. Don't disclose your desired payment. That's a cardinal rule. Don't let them know what you want your payment. Don't go unprepared. Do your homework. Don't ever buy on the first trip to the dealership, because then it's an impulse buy, and an impulse buy is never good. Never buy without arranging independent financing. Don't buy without full disclosure of all the information that you need from the dealer. Don't sign any documents until you're satisfied with everything that you got all the right information, you bought what you wanted, not anything else. I would not recommend credit, life, and accident health without talking to your own agent first. There are some times if you have some health issues, sometimes it's easier to get into credit, life, and accident health than it is other types of credit or other types of life and accident health insurance. That would be the one exception, possibly, for buying that. I wouldn't recommend buying the whole protection package. As I said, I have kind of changed my opinion on the undercoating. And look at a different vehicle. If you think you're going to need gap coverage, you're probably buying the wrong vehicle. And don't bow to pressure. Your feet are your best friend. If that dealer is putting a hard sell on you, get up and walk out. If they're trying to force you into buying, you know there's something that they don't want you to figure out. That's pretty much my presentation in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. What we're going to do now is he's going to hand out some handouts. So please take these with you. In the second hour, we're simply going to stay over. If you have any specific individual questions, feel free to come on out. There won't be any kind of discussion, simply one-on-one discussions. As we finish this up, I want you to be thinking about, again, the whole car buying process. Focus on some of the issues I brought up, as well as the details that Marty discussed. The biggest issue he talked about, which is going to be your question of the night, what is the number one cardinal sin that you must avoid? That's going to be your question. But I want you to be focusing on my perspective. Do not identify your self-image with the car that you own. That car does not make you somebody. Detach your self-image from stuff. Stuff should not define you. That's my big message for you tonight as we go forward throughout the semester. Any questions before we get to the question of the night? Okay, so the question is, what did our car dealer tell us? What is the one cardinal sin to avoid when going in to buy that car?